Okay, good morning, folks. Kind of a chilly morning here. 39 degrees outside. Not a complaint, it's unusual. It's a welcome unusual, but got all kinds of bits of plastic stuff here left over from yesterday. I can't run the little vacuum cleaner. Don't want to wake the girls up. Anyhow, I'm going to try to do a little bit of painting. And kind of take a look at what we've got here. Now, this is the problem with priming these tanks for me. I don't have an airbrush. I have no interest in one for reasons I've said many, many times. Let me adjust this underneath here. Mostly due to the fact that I can't airbrush here. I would have to go in the hot garage and do it. Now, today the garage happens to not be hot, but that's the main reason I don't have one. So I prime with spray paint, or I try to do most of my priming with spray paint. Lightly, because it will cover over the details, and then I'll go in and clean up the black with some paint. In this case, hey Harvey, good morning. In this case, the Vallejo surface primer. So that's the first thing we're going to do, and we're going to need to let that set for a little bit. Not very long. I don't know what the instructions say. It probably would tell you to stay, instructions are always like uber conservative. They're always like, wait, let's see, what does it even say on here? Allow primer to cure 12 hours before beginning masking process. Well, I'm not masking anything, so I don't have to wait 12 hours. I'll wait 30 minutes or something like that. It's just basically to get the black in the right places. Now, I happen to use this stuff because it flows really, really well. And it saves me a hell of a lot of time. Not for any other reason. I don't think that it's particularly... You can scrape it off with like a fingernail. So, I don't really know that it's that awesome or anything. It just happens to be the replacement that I got for what I used to use before, which is no longer available. Really annoying when you find a product you're happy with and they decide to discontinue it. So that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to get a brush we don't care about so much, as I like to say. As soon as I find one. One that is going to have getting destroyed, so to speak. Oh no, we're not going to use a new one. It is pretty harsh on these brushes. Alright, I'm going to have to bring this over here. That one should be fine. And I'm going to pull out another one just for good measure. Now, yeah, see, this is of course, this is on plastics. It's very slick, so it's not going to stick super well. Should have plenty of space over here to work this. Now, I did get a chance to use a product yesterday that I'd never used before. I'd heard really highly of. And we'll see how it works out today. And that is the plastic putty from Vallejo. And the applicator is pretty amazing. You can just put like it on one dot. So I've got these on the Panzer IIIs, for instance. I've got these spots where it was the injection mold or the release, whatever. It was the little divots that are on there. So I just literally went in there with a little dot, and we'll have to sand that off and paint it because we don't want it to look like that. And the same thing on the Czech 38s. There was a little divot here on the side. So I think all three of them have that. So, anywho, we did manage to make these three different, by the way. Side note, if you watch the Czech 38 video, they gave you this. Let me see if I can find the correct instructions. I think this is the way they suggest. And we're talking about the tools. They have these tools that are kind of thrown on there. I didn't want all three of them to be the same because they're like neatly wrapped a certain way. This is how the original instructions say. So what I did is I flipped another one right side around, you know, basically the back to the front. I don't know how that shovel's holding on there, but it is. And this one, I just, what'd I do with this one? Oh, I fitted it upside down. I put it upside down on this one. So, and then we added some separate tracks. I actually saw a picture that had of a T30 of a Czech 38 that had the reinforcing, you know, typical reinforcing is like this. You've got it bolted on, what have you. Which technically there should be a piece of metal going up there and holding it in place, but I'm not going there. That's too much. I saw one that had it here under the driver's visor, so we made that one a little different. So just something to give them a little bit of a personality. Now, the turrets of the T-26s and the BT-7s are all the same turret, even though they came from two different kits. And these barrels, I am really worried about them not being very durable. We'll just have to be extra careful. They're so non-durable that I didn't want to drill the edge of the barrel. I don't know if there's anything I could have drilled anyways. They're like a machine gun almost. Okay, so let's get the rest of this stuff going. So that way this can dry. I actually had to go to the store and buy black spray paint because I had, I had these big containers. Krylon, I think is what it is. The stuff that you used to get before just wasn't available. You can't get Model Master stuff. It's not available. So you got to use this crappier quality Krylon. And both of the nozzles were clogged. And one of them had probably half of the paint left. The other one had 3/4 or maybe even more than 3/4. I had to throw them away. I even tried a different nozzle, just wouldn't work. So, but I can't just paint this directly on the model because it's too slick, it wouldn't stick. So, this is how we've done all the other tanks, and I've been pretty happy with the results. So, that's why we do what we do. We don't want any of that happy green color coming through, even though we are going to repaint this thing green. And when I was building the Czech 38s, I was talking about the turret numbers I wanted to use for them. I said I didn't know if I was going to use the hollow white ones, like I've seen some pictures of the 7th Panzer Division in Russia in 41, or the ones that are red with white outlines. And I have both, and I have plenty of both. They're on the decal set, so I'll have to make that decision which one I'm going to do. I'm probably going to do the ones with red and white. They stand out a little bit more, and and I've already got my Panzer 3s and 4s using just not using red on there. So it's probably the route we're going to go. Aha. There you are. Even with airbrush, you can't get it in certain places. Okay. Let's just do the hulls first, and we'll go back and do the turrets. All four of these vehicles will be green. I was going to buy some decals for them, and then realized by the time I paid for the decals, I could have bought several other models. So I'm going to attempt to do some of the markings that are included in the decals and just hand paint them, because they're really pretty simple. And no, they don't have any slogans. None of these will have slogans. Slogans weren't that common for the smaller vehicles. And they weren't that common before, I'm going to say before Moscow. So if you're doing early stuff, you know, the Russians, you know, when they were in that big battle at the Ukraine, that supposedly bigger has more vehicles in it than Kursk. It may not have more running vehicles. The Soviets had like multiple thousand tanks, but a lot of them just broke down. Didn't even see action. Dubno, I want to say, is what it is. Has like 3 names. And none of the tanks had slogans in that time period. You know, they were doing great until those encirclement battles, and they're like, "Hey, we need motivational speakers on side of tanks. You know, we need slogans." Before that, they didn't have slogans. You know, so these will not have slogans because they're for that period. They're for the pre-September 1941 stuff. And these really went together really fast. The only gripe that I have about these is that the barrels just scare the crap out of me how thin they are. That's it. Everything else about them is great. I opened the box and I was like, man, these aren't very good. That's what I'm thinking, you know. They're just fine. They will do just fine. And actually, the tracks have more details than a lot of the other tracks. More than the Plastic Soldier Company tracks. Well, depends on which one. Anyways, they're pretty good. They're pretty good for what we have planned for them. the Betushka, the nickname they gave these tanks. And these are significantly bigger than the T-26s. They had a huge engine. I forget what the horsepower on it is. But they had a huge engine on them, which is why they went so damn fast. Among one of the reasons that they went so damn fast was they had a lot of horsepower. If I remember correctly, it was like 400 horsepower or something like that, which, as opposed to like, a couple hundred, like almost double the horsepower. Some of the other vehicles. I'm thinking that BT-7 versus Czech 38, that's what it is. The Czech tank had kind of normal horsepower, and this thing had almost double it. That would explain the speed difference, among other things. I just do a light dusting with the spray can, with the rattle can. If you try to cover everything, you're going to over cover places, and just you'll cover over all the detail. Paint is really, really thick, so we don't want to do that. This is one of my least favorite processes because it's kind of mindless, and I think anybody could do it. I don't need any finesse or anything. You just slap paint on. This stuff is actually really good because it flows well, and it also is self-leveling. So if you put too much there, it's kind of forgiving. And I've done that before, just to test it to see if it was true. And yep, sure enough. Yeah, this brush is getting raped, so no point in using a nice one. It's about as much paint as you'll see me get on myself. I pride myself on not making a mess. It takes time to clean up a mess, and also you can end up getting paint on something else you don't want to, which causes you to have to do a cleanup. So this stuff is just very messy. Right, BT has a sizable aero engine, put out about 400 horsepower. I do remember something. Not really suitable to be up armored, so it's stuck with thin plates, unlike the 38T. Yeah, I read part of that book on my travel. I picked it up in New York City, and I was trying to read it at the airport, but I do really bad at reading with distractions. I end up rereading the same sentence. So, geez, I can't be good at everything. So that's one of the things I'm terrible at. Trying to read something with like other distractions and stuff. It just, I can't tune out. Yeah, it surprised me. That's one thing you don't look at, as wargamers. You're not concerned with the horsepower. Most tanks have less horsepower than my personal vehicle. So when I see something that has more, I'm like, damn. I mean, even big tanks, like a Panzer III's got less than 300 horsepower. You know, it's moving a 21, 22-ton tank, whatever they are. You see something with 400 horsepower, like, wow, that's cooking. Didn't know that. I didn't know that when I was a kid. I didn't care about horsepower on tanks. It's not one of the stats. It's not armor, not penetration. One thing I was reading about that book, it was comparing the reliability of vehicles at the beginning of World War II to the reliability of vehicles in World War One, and it was something absurd. Like the tanks in World War One were only good for, like, again, I'm going from memory, less than 50 miles, a lot less than 50 miles, and it's like they're done. It's like, you know, and that's just something you don't even consider on the war games table, you know. It was really short durability. So, you know, some of these World War II tanks that you think are reliable, like a T-34 or something like that, they still have to have their engine changed every set of kilometers. I don't know what the number is, but it's a lot less than you would think it is. You know, I mean, what's an oil change on a car? You know, 10,000 miles if you're using synthetic. And that's just an oil change. Usually you have to have an engine replacement by much less than that in a tank. It's something you don't think about. So one thing that's important to the crew is how easy is it to access that damn engine, because you're going to be hating life every time you got to do that kind of thing. And that's something that's not even considered by most people, except for the tank crew. One day on a tank crew, do that one time, you'll realize, man, this is a mother to deal with. Every time we got to deal with this situation. Like a Panther, okay? Let's say you're the crew on a Panther, and you got to change those interwoven bogey wheels. What a pain in the ass. You know, you got to take two off to get one. They get the one in the back. I bet those guys are hating life. This stuff that normally we don't think about, unless we're a mechanic. Follow the chieftain. I do sometimes. He's just not fun at parties. He has a wealth of information. his delivery's a little dry. Had to have the suspension coils checked every couple hundred miles. He has a thing about track tension. He does. It stops the track from coming off the wheels. Yeah. Yeah, he talks about track. He's had to work on those sons of bitches before, you can tell. His his videos, the most annoying thing about his videos is that, and they're very good videos, don't get me wrong. They take breaks and do the roll of tanks inside the chieftain hatch or whatever the logo way too frequently. Luckily, it's quick, but I would prefer if he had. It seems like he just doesn't have a very good sense of humor. I don't know. He knows his shit though. But I like the episode where him and Lindy Beige get inside a Churchill. I like Lindy Beige a lot more. He's entertaining. Humorous. If you get a chance, watch the episode. Lindy Beige has an episode on the German half track 251 series, and it's really funny. I think it's called like Hanomag, Steed of the Wehrmacht, or something like that. And it's a 20-minute long video, and it's really entertaining. Okay, I think we're good. Now I'm going to have to, this is going to take professional cleaning, or this thing is dead. So I'm going to be right back. And 8 of you, wow, good morning. Welcome, folks. We're going to have to let these dry a little bit, which means I'm probably going to try to sand off this little, see how good this putty is. Get these ready, and then by the time I'm done with that, we can start doing the process that I use to paint these guys. So I'm not even going to shut the video off. We're just going to shut the mic off, and I'll be back in less than 2 minutes. All right, as promised, I'm back. See if we can salvage some kind of life out of this brush for, later use for the same type of process. Lindy Beige doesn't cut it for me. Well, that's okay. It's got lots of people on there. I just think that he's amusing. I don't like people that drone on and on and on and on and on. They just, and it's not that I have a short attention span. It's that I'm not that way. Maybe it's you're attracted to people who speak how you do. I have I'm pretty emotional, meaning I get excited about certain things when they happen, and I don't really like watching people that do videos that are just unemotional. There's a channel that got recommended to me within the last year, and it's a very good channel. It has a lot of stuff that I like on it. But the guy who runs it, and I don't know what his name is, and I don't want to badmouth people because they do a good job, but it's a personality that doesn't appeal to me. And this guy, it's called World War II something or another. Just drones on and on and on and on and on. He doesn't get excited. I think I may have seen him smile once. It's just like he acts like he's angry or bored, or it's just not my kind of a personality. And but that's who he is. You know, just like I can't change who I am. You know. But there's lots of different things out there that appeal to, just like sitcoms. Some sitcoms appeal to some people. Maybe some sitcoms appeal, and maybe no sitcoms appeal to some people. But it's just one of those things that makes us different from each other. But there's shows that I used to watch that I used to like, and then after a while I just get tired of it. There was a show a long time ago that came out on, I think it was on Discovery, that I really, really liked, and I'm sure everybody's heard of it by now, called Mythbusters. And I really, really, really like that show because I'm not a science person, but they made it entertaining. And after like 1 or 2 seasons, they changed the format of the show. And it's a show where they basically take, I'm just looking for my X-Acto knife, wherever the hell it might be. Maybe I opened some box somewhere else. I'm sure I have a spare here. Trying to do one thing and talk about something else, so we'll see how unsuccessful I will be in that. Here's another bottom to it. But they try to disprove certain myths by, doing different things. And they changed the format of their show after season 1, where they usually would have like 3 things they try to do. And instead of starting one and finishing that one and going to the next one, they started all 3 and jumped between them, and I hated that format. That reminded me of work where I don't get to finish anything and I get interrupted. You like the chieftain's research? If he wants to make a contentious point, he backs up his remarks. Oh, he's good. He's just a little too drony. Now, I've watched lots of his videos. It's not like I won't watch them. I wish he was a little bit more exciting. And I did watch the last 2 videos that I watched of his were for his walk around at a museum in Finland, the Tank Museum in Finland, and then the Tank Museum that they have here at Fort Benning that's not open to us taxpayers, and I was upset about that. We went over. We were going to go see it in Aberdeen Proving Grounds. It had been there for years, but I never got a chance to go up there. And just before I got a chance to go, they moved it, and now it's not open to the public. So, thanks, federal government. All right, let's see if we can screw this up. I'm gonna try. Has this set well enough? It may not be. It may not have set well enough. This was overnight. And take off anything that's really, really big. And this might have been a good job for the sanding sticks, although I didn't think I had found a use for those things beforehand. But there's different folks on there that have different shows, and I don't like people that drone and drone on and on and on. They're just not very exciting. think that's all it's going to take. We'll know when we paint over it. It is a pretty big divot that was there. You know who I like for his research? And apparently he's a controversial guy. I don't know. I don't think he's controversial. I think he does a good job of looking at all the reference materials. The guy named Tick for Tick History. And he does, man, his videos are really, really thorough, I think, as far as with maps and stuff. He just put out a video the other day on how he makes his maps, and wow, that's a lot of work. Yeah, let's just take this top layer off. This tiny little bit that we know. All I did was put a tiny little dot, but you know, it comes up like a, kind of like a soft serve ice cream a little bit. So you're gonna have more in places you don't need it. And where's the last one? Oh, this one actually didn't have it on it. One Panzer III was okay. Man, these things are really solid. That's good. Just in case something goes sideways. Now this one, it's funny how they changed the styling here, and I really probably should fill in that little line, but I'm not going to. I'm going to be lazy. That's the corner I decided to cut. We did come in and sand this down without messing any of these beautiful rivets. But anyways, I was watching one of Tick's videos the other day, and he goes over how he makes all the maps and stuff. And it's not how much work it is, but how much he has to fight with the video editor or editors. I don't mean the person, I mean the program. And as someone who's done a fair amount of video editing themselves, obviously not to that level, that's probably the process I hate the most of making a video. Is having a fight with, you know, I just want this to be over here, and then you save it and it's not there, or it gets misconfigured, or it's a pain in the ass, and people don't realize that aren't kind of in the know, unless you try to make your own videos. Yeah, this is almost like plastic a little bit. It's not gritty. All right, we're going to leave that like that, and hopefully that'll do the trick. But it was a pretty deep You know, we're not interested in IPMS level modeling, but there is a big divot in there. It looked like it took a round, and that's a bit much. That's a bit much for that. There's a guy that does car reviews that I really like. Those of you that are not in the United States probably don't know who he is. A guy named Joe Rady, and he puts out, I swear, a car review every day. New cars. And he's really thorough. He has a good attitude. He's got lots of energy. He's got some humor thrown in. And he generally is pretty positive about, I don't know that he has a negative word to say about something. He's not there to bash stuff. He's just kind of giving people kind of his hands-on experience on it. Got a chance to meet him at a car show a couple of months ago, and he seemed just like the person he was on the video, which is good. I value that a lot. You know, be the person that you are all the time. But his videos are very entertaining, and there's a lot of work done in his. A lot of editing and stuff like that. You know, because they're top quality. I mean, really well done. I'm not sure how he makes his money. Probably on advertising or viewers or. He's not dry at all. Let's put it that way. Well, that one turned out really nice. Okay. Oh, and if this isn't dry, we can pay a couple. We could paint some Nazi tank commanders because we've got that to do too. We put them up on a. We got a couple of those guys to do. And a Russian one too, because I'm making one of the T-70s with the hatch open, and the guy is on a tirade. See if I can find him. He is screaming bloody murder. I don't know how this figure is going to turn out. Okay, we put him here. See if you can get a good look at his face. Hey, he's got an open mouth. He was like chewing somebody out. I'm tired of this tank with two-man turret. I gotta do everything. I have to command the tank and load and fire the gun and everything. And loader is slow. Loader is slow on draw. I don't know what he's saying. I can't scream things out loud. Girls are asleep. Let's see. Let's zoom back out of this. Okay. Growing up in the 70s. How do you find growing up in the 70s? And what I mean by that is, I grew up in the 70s, but I also grew up in the 80s. But I was 9 in 1980. So I consider, like, if I was going to tell somebody, I'd say I grew up in the 80s. Because, yeah, I remember the 70s, but I don't remember it that well, thankfully, because, man, people wore some funny stuff then. There was much history published that was later showed up as wrong. So now I really appreciate research rather than informed opinion. Oh, yeah, research is important. Yeah, just tell me the facts. I don't want you to tell me, well, this is what it means. I don't like that. I just want a little bit more, less dryness. Is there something that you learned growing up that was kind of like fact and now has been shown to be incorrect, and you still haven't come to grips with it? Is there something like that? You made me think of that when you said some things you grew up that were wrong, that were known to be wrong. Is there something out there that you grew up with that were like, hey, this is how it is, and then it's wrong, and you're like, I don't know. I still like to think that it's a certain way. I mean, obviously, it's something that I can think of one thing right off the bat that bugs the living shit out of me, and I'm never going to get over it. Ever, ever, ever. And a lot of it has to do with it's probably something that is relatively new stuff. Like in my case, it involves dinosaurs. Dinosaurs only been around for a couple hundred years, that people knew about them, kind of thing. So when I grew up, they were lizards, right? They were cold-blooded, not related to birds. And here's the thing, I am never going to be able to get over it. Feathers. I'm never buying a feathered T-Rex. I get maybe a small creature, but I'm not buying into the feathered T-Rex. And I'm probably wrong, and I don't care. If I was going to build models of dinosaurs, I am not making a feathered fucking Tyrannosaurus, a huge predator that has feathers on it. It looks stupid, and it goes against... It's just wrong, in my opinion, I'm not a scientist. Don't pretend to be one. It just doesn't look right. And, hey, I'm not painting dinosaurs right now, so I think you're pretty safe. Pretty safe with that, but that's the one thing I can't get over. I'm sure there's other things. That's the only one that comes to mind. That's the one thing I can't come to grips with. I can come to grips with other stuff, like all these German general memoirs they're just self-serving Nazi pricks. Most of them, I'm not saying the stuff the Russians said was right either. I'm just saying that, man, this thing's heavy for being this small. Let's stop that. You do not have the time to listen to my tirade about being misinformed. Okay, I shall just say Thatcher and now have to spit. Well, I don't have a comment on that because that's your internal politics that I'm not privy to. I know who she is, but I don't know anything about her, so. I would say that pretty much anything any politician has uttered has been pure crap. Regardless of what side of the aisle the politician's from. So, but sometimes, or most of the time, they're doing it on purpose. I'm talking about stuff that, we think it's this, and then, oh, it's not that. One thing that always gets me is science stuff. Stars light years away. I'm not buying that. We can't even find the wreck of a plane that happened a couple years ago on this planet. And you're telling me what happens 15 light years away or 15 million light years, or you're full of shit, okay? That's you have no comprehension of that. But they're ever so certain that that's what happens. No. I'm not buying that shit. That's going to be wrong in no time. There's no way that of all the possibilities, that's what it is. But luckily, that's something that doesn't affect me at all. I don't really care, you know. Okay, I think that's pretty good. We won't know until we actually put paint on it. Okay, you commie tanks. How you guys looking? You're still a little wet there. Doesn't mean we have to start with you. These guys are okay. All right, let's get the Russian green out. $8.94 Russian green. And there's other different colors of Russian green I could be using, but I'm just not using those. Hey, look, one where I did designs for the Huns. I don't miss painting 15s. I don't. I will go back to painting 15s, but I won't go back to paint. I won't go back to making any DBA videos. It's over. And for those of you that enjoy them, I'm sorry. It's just I'm tired of fighting the war. I don't want to fight wars you can't win. And it's really unsatisfying to go round and round with people, and we can't all agree what the rules say. So. Naval history books in the 70s. I don't know that I have any books that have really misinformation in them, but I'm sure that they are out there. They just don't. How about look at the paint schemes? How about look at that paint scheme for the counter paint scheme that has light blue in it? The colors in that were all wrong. They even had them in museums and stuff like that. Okay, what brush are we going to use for this? Because this is another one that we're going to trash. We may need to do one this small. Let's get a couple of them. Because this is kind of an important... Oh, we're using bigger ones for this. Let's see here. Because this is like the equivalent of the gray one we were using. Is this a green one? Oh, it's these, which explains this. Look at this green color that's left over, and it's from using this green. So there must be a core tint in there that's that color. We're going to use the green one. That's what we did. Yeah. We'll keep this one as a spare if we need it. All right. So we've got this all black. We're going to come in with the... Oh, I hate doing this on this one that's all nice. Let's switch this. You do. The coffee table history of battleships. 1860s from that. Oh, is that one all wrong? Oh, please don't tell me that. That's like my Bible. Please don't ruin my childhood thing. Anthony Preston's All World's Battleships. Is there a lot of wrong stuff on that one? God, that's a great book. That's my favorite book, probably. I'm just going to go over this thing. The big controversy between, did the Bismarck sink with scuttling charges, or was it sunk by one of the torpedoes from the Dorsetshire? Oh no, we're back to that again. I don't care, you know. The Bismarck, the other Tiger tank. The other overrated thing. And we want to leave some black in. That's the whole point doing it this way. Leaving some black in places. I got one book though here. It's probably one book for sure that's probably inaccurate, but there's a lot of inaccurate stuff on the internet, but that's usually the first place I go to for paint schemes. But sometimes you got to know what you're looking at. You can't just take things at face value. And then, you know, there's misunderstandings, and then there's people that literally put things out there specifically. They know better. They know it's wrong, and they still put it out there. That's two different forms of punishment for people. You know, those two things are not the same. One thing that raged for decades is the old Carthaginian pikeman debate. Oh yeah, Duncan had worked damn hard fighting that mistranslation, but it still crops up, usually outside of wargaming. Yeah. Yeah, the old pikeman thing. It'd make the army list a lot more interesting if they were pikemen, though. That's funny because you say pikeman. First thing I thought of is, yeah, but I'm new to ancient wargaming. I still consider myself new to. It's not that I'm new to ancient wargaming. I am not an ancient wargamer. I am a World War II guy. I am most certainly a World War II person. Ancients just happened to be something that I got into along the way. But I had never played any ancient game or medieval game prior to 2004 when I played DBA, and it's questionable whether DBA is really either one of those two things. You know, that you represent. It's a good representation for medieval warfare. It's a great game. It's just so, vague, Maybe that's the appeal for many. I've always played very high detailed bean countering type games where you learn about history. So Protection from torpedoes, shards of hull plating fly inboard, and puncture bulkheads. Just one example. Oh, here we go. Oh, I missed that one. SMS Baden, described as being structurally weak. Source is Director of Naval Construction examined the ship and noted thin plating. Friedman makes the point Germans and U.S. knew that this improved. Wasn't the Bismarck was based on the Baden, right? The Baden and the Bayern, it was basically just a modernized version of those. I remember when I was younger, it was attributed that the hit that blew up the hood to the Prince Eugen. I don't know if that's still up in debate. I haven't followed the controversy, but which basically meant that the Bismarck didn't do dick. It certainly didn't shoot down any planes, right? It didn't shoot down a single swordfish, if I remember correctly. Well, the horns back here, that's an interesting place. Or maybe it's up here. Yeah, it's up here. Okay. This just looked like the horn. It looked like a horny thing. So for those of you that don't know, my process, spray paint in black, dry brush the green on, and then we'll give this a Agrax Earthshade wash, which is a dark brown wash, and then we'll put this color on again, lighten it up with dark sand. I believe dark sand is the color that I use. A couple of levels. Force the shadows, so in other words, detail paint some of the things that pop up corners, stuff like that, and it's good to go for weathering. And they turn out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with them. Well, let me give you an example. This is a finished T-34, not weathered, using this method. And then after it's weathered, same method, looks a little bit more like this. So this is the same as this. I just have the same colors that are in the groundwork. Then I got groundwork here. Get dry brushed up onto the tank. And I'm happy with how that turns out. It looks how I want it to look like. So I'm happy with it. Bismarck is based on studies of AP shells made in early 30s. Bismarck is designed to cruise in the Atlantic with significant range. We played the Battle of Denmark Strait one time, and the hood blew up in that game the same time that the hood blew up in real life. And I'm like, okay, we're done here. I'm not superstitious at all, but we were done there. Design requirements for King George V are available. Directory of Gunnery asked for twin turrets because of reliability and rate of fire. It's declined because of weight constraint. So they wanted more double guns instead of the 2 quad turrets. Speaking of which, speaking of the King George V class, I found out the other day, and the other day meaning about a month ago, because somebody had posted a picture of it, I think is what it was. Somebody I was friends with on Facebook. Facebook friend. How about an acquaintance that I have that I communicate with on the internet that shares a common hobby interest? There you go. Posted a picture or a drawing of the wreck of Repulse when she went down with the Force Z. It was only in like less than 300 feet of water. I was floored. I was floored how shallow that was. And, you know, Prince of Wales, of course, is in the same depth, basically. So I had no idea that that's extremely shallow. When you have a vessel, whatever it is, and if you stand it on end and its end would be sticking out of the water, you know it's shallow. So that's pretty shallow water. Yeah, I was personally never a fan of the King George V class ships. And a lot of it has to do with the games that you play. The game that you play has like armor thicknesses, and that particular class of ships has a very thin conning tower armor. So in that game, it, it's easy to penetrate the conning tower. And that's one of those locations that in the game could cause a catastrophic explosion. So I wasn't a fan of the King George V class because of that. For no other reason other than that. 5 inches of conning tower armor or something like that. Something really, really low, but that's one of those problems that you've got, you know, when you're dealing with a war game and war game stats. As you take something like the Queen Elizabeth class battleships and the Ramillies class, the R class battleships. Okay, they're in World War One. They're relatively equivalent in armor. I want to say that the Queen Elizabeths have a little bit more. I could be wrong. But they got modernized in the 30s. The Queen Elizabeths did. I mean, I'm sure they both did, but and the ones that were really modernized a lot, like the Queen Elizabeth, Warspite, and Valiant, that had the big conning tower, so to speak, kind of like Renown did, but Repulse did not. The same type of larger conning tower ended up going with having very little armor in it. So when you play a game that involves penetrating hit locations, and that's one of the hit locations, it's seen as a severe weak point of the ship in game terms. And it may not have been in real life. But in game terms, you got a ship like the Renown, Valiant, Queen Elizabeth, Warspite, King George V class. That may be it. They have very little armor in that location. And it's a huge, huge problem because they get penetrated by an 8-inch round and blown up. Because that is a location that leads to a potential critical, even though it's a low chance of it happening, of getting a catastrophic explosion. And again, that might just be something that is in the rules, and in real life, it's not really a liability. Same thing with the British cruisers. A lot of the British cruisers have. You take like the town. What are they called? Well, they're the treaty cruisers, but they're 8-inch cruisers like Norfolk and Suffolk and Shropshire and all those county class. There we go. County class cruisers are really weak in that game because they'll have deck armor and they'll have belt armor, and that's it. They won't have any armor on the turrets. They won't have, and that's a big problem because you could hit the handling room or something bad could happen, and you got an epic fail on your hands. Anthony Preston wrote, typically about King George V, unfortunately, much disproved. The quad turrets had unreliable ammo feed. Oh. Bastard Anthony Preston. You know what I dislike about pre-dreadnoughts? I dislike about pre-dreadnoughts that prior to World War One, a lot of navies had their ships all painted the same way, and that's very light gray or almost white upper works and hull, and the ochre funnels, and I think it looks horrible. It also looks bad that the Russians do it, and the multiple navies paint their ships the same way. Just seems I don't like the ochre funnels. I don't think they look good on anything. Maybe on a steamship, passenger liner, but I think it's just an ugly paint scheme, and that a lot of units, for some reason, they gravitated towards that. Yeah, in World War One they were repainted gray, but I'm just talking about in peacetime. All the ships ended up kind of having the same paint scheme. Anthony Preston, you ruined my childhood. All right, I don't have any coffee, so I gotta go grab another Coke. I'll be right back. I'll be honest with you, his books, I didn't get them. I didn't get them because of what was written in them. I got them for the pictures. Of course, the pictures could be wrong as well too. Where's the book that I'm thinking of that has got to have massive inaccuracies in it? And it's one of those books from the 70s. Might even be from the 60s. Let me see if I can. Okay, glance at it. Is it that one? If it is, we can't get to it. No. I thought I had it. Not that, not that, not that, not that. No. No, I don't know where it is. It's a book my dad had. This book probably has a lot of inaccuracies. This is also a cool book. This is a book my dad had. My dad wasn't a war gamer. He had a little bit of everything. He was into history. And this is a book that I'm sure you guys all know about. This might even be from the 60s. It had a dust jacket. I don't know if I ever saw a dust jacket on ours. Warships and Sea Battles of World War One. Beekman House. This has got to be like a 67. This is what my dad used to do. He had a little stamp with his last name on it, and he would always put it on the end of the books. I don't know why. It's not like he loaned them out to people, but that was just kind of his thing. What year is this? First published form 1973. You know this book. I bet there's a lot of wrong stuff in here. Old school style pictures. I don't know why my dad had this. He wasn't a war gamer, but anyhow, I've read 3 or 4 books on Jutland. And I think one of the most interesting things that I would love to do, I don't know if it's possible, would be to do the night action at Jutland, where the fleets interpenetrated each other. That was pretty cool. Pretty cool. How is Barefoot Mitch doing? He's still playing every Monday. He's got some. He plays every Monday because he has somebody that comes and plays from 9 a.m. until just before we get there at 5. So if I'm not able to show up, he still plays all day long. He's just playing something else. There's a person that plays with him, lives out of town, and they're retired, and there's no reason for them to stay late and drive to the middle of the woods in the dark, when they can just play during the daytime. So we did play Tuesday. I couldn't play Monday because Monday was a mess for me. My plane arrived late, and I had a hell day at work. So sometimes if it looks like I'm not going to make it, I'll just cancel. And that way it's one thing less I got to worry about. There's nothing worse than being stressed out at work and then realize, oh shit, on top of that, today's the day I got to leave early because then I got to go do this and I got to do the other thing and then I got to, go with her and, So I'll move it to Tuesday. We did play on Tuesday. But we're playing stuff off the record right now. It was Ancients related. It's just not the 3-letter Ancients. So, and they can't film it because it's in development. And maybe nothing comes of it, but I won't be playing DBA as it is, as far as I can tell. Just don't want to argue with people about shit. And, you come across some rule that doesn't make sense and you got to deal with it. You got to continue playing it that way. I'm just done with that part of my life. But he's doing well. And of course that means we won't be filming those. Because they could change, but I'm actually okay not Not gaming face to face that much, honestly. Now, if we were doing other things, like there's some stuff they've been playing during the daytime before I get there. They've been playing a lot of Rapid Fire, and I wouldn't mind playing that. Not because it's World War II, so at least you can talk World War II shit while we're playing it. But not that that would tickle my, not that that would scratch my World War II itch, because it's a bit generic for my taste. But it's a game. They just don't play that by the time I get there because they've been playing it all day long, kind of thing. And yeah, he's still barefoot too. No, working towards getting this done. I don't know. There's no time frame on this, and it's not likely that I will run this over there. I will, say I was going to run a game. I'm more likely run it here. That way I can set up here, not take time setting it up, getting everything, and being rushed, and it'll be on my terms, on a Saturday or a Sunday. When normal people are off. So, not gonna run stuff at shows. Not gonna run anything at a show again. Just don't want to be rushed. I want to go and just have fun, hang out. I don't want any responsibilities at a show. I got a guy. He lives in California. He's a guy I met at a show. He's a cool guy. He's been wanting to play one. He's been wanting me to play one of his games, and he does come to our Florida cons, probably about once every 4 years or so. And if I'm running a bunch of games, I can't play his game because I don't know when he's going to run it, and then I have to cancel a game I've already. So it's like I don't want to commit to having to do a certain thing, and be shackled, shackled down. So doesn't mean I'm giving up gaming. Oh no. Just I want to do it on my terms. You have that book here. It's called Purnell's History of World War One: Warships and Sea Battles. Yeah, it's an old one. I don't know how my dad. He's had it. He's had it as long as I've been alive, I guess, or close. If it's 73. Well, there are a bunch of a series of books called Ballantine or something like that. I'm sure those things are full of wrong stuff. Yeah, I'm not doing a feathered T-Rex. Screw you, science nerds. That doesn't make any sense. Something that big with feathers like a chicken. That's worse than German tanks without the turret storage thing. It looks stupid. Hey, we're artists to some degree or another, so it's our own artistic preference, artistic. It's our take on it. Nice thing about it is this is a pretty quick stage. The only stage that takes a long time is the wash. The wash I'm going to give it after this is you got to wait for that thing to dry, unfortunately. And that could take a while. One left. So that might be the time to break off and do some Gates of Hell Ostfront or something like that while that dries. The video gaming doesn't take over this for me. It just gives you another outlet. You know, it's like you want to play World War II, but you don't have your stuff ready. So you go and play a video game. At least it gives you something to look forward to it. Okay, let's give this a preliminary rinse to go in there and clean this a little bit better. We'll leave that there for now. I don't want to break off and do that. So let's grab one of these brushes that we have using for, you can tell which one they are because they're kind of brown looking, for the Agrax Earthshade, and get that going. That just, I actually got this idea from somebody else, watching their videos, and I liked how they turned out. Put it to use. All right. Wish I could find the name of the naval books that really got me really interested in them. And there were ones that were in the library, and I think that they may have had some black and white pictures. And there were some books that the library would have. And I mean library, I mean, you know, middle school library. You know, and that had been rebound. So I'm sure that they were earlier versions of them, but they had either red or blue binding. It was all a solid color, and it would say the name of what it was. Like if they had rebound that book, it would just be a solid blue, and it was a blue not too unlike this, you know, and but it was a series of, it wasn't a Time Life, it wasn't Ballantine. I've seen the Ballantine books in college. Those are kind of heavy on pictures. This was heavy on text. And they're the ones that really got me interested in Battle of the Atlantic, which ultimately led to being interested in World War II and then wargaming. But I don't know what books they were. Yeah, they wouldn't be worth reading now. I'm just out of curiosity. It'd be they'd be way too vague, but talked about all the surface raiders and no, not in a ton of detail, but and this would have been probably 1982. So some books have been around a long time. Like I went to a used bookstore a couple months ago, and it had multiple copies of a book that I remember seeing in college that I really wanted to get a hold of. And I never did. And even though it's pretty zoomed out, it's pretty strategic, it has a fair amount of details, but it might be like really dated by now. It's a book by a guy named Paul Carell, called Scorched Earth. And it's basically Barbarossa from, I'm going to say, Kursk to the end. And, probably a lot of misinformation in there now because it's like from early 70s or something like that. But it had a lot of really good maps with like where units were. And back when I was doing micro armor and playing command decision and those 1 to 5 scale type of operational games, I thought was really useful. But they had multiple copies of it. I mean, they had like, I don't know, 12 copies of it probably at the bookstore. And there was different versions. Some of them had paper that was really glossy, which I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of books that have uber glossy paper. I'm not really good at reading books that people tell me to read. So, like, I've never read any Stalingrad books. I'm just not interested in Stalingrad. So, it looks a little bit more time consuming because I am doing 4 vehicles at once. Just do all the holes. There was another book that I saw in college that I always wanted to get a copy of, and I never did. And now I'm no longer interested, but it was something like Battle of Normandy Then and Now, or something like that. It would have pictures of some tank in front of some house, and then would have that same house, obviously without a tank in front of it. That was pretty cool. Maybe I do have the maybe I have the Normandy one. There was just several other ones. Yeah, 400 horsepower is a lot of horsepower for a tank, especially on a tank with not much armor. Right, you have to go now. Good chatting with you. Happy painting. You too, Harvey. Enjoy your Sunday. Talk to you soon. I'm kind of fading myself. Lack of obtuse amount of caffeine is definitely affecting me. I also only got like 5 hours of sleep last night. I gotta get this stuff done, man. These aren't gonna paint themselves. And what I really want to do is hand paint the markings. Now, I did save quite a few decal sheets, and it gives me enough detail for what I need. But at least one of these tanks is going to have some kind of a white identification stripe across the top. Some of them had them like here, like over both hatches. Obviously, I'm not going to make it up. I want to use ideas from other decals, and I've got them all saved. So I just got to go through there and see what works and what works with these type vehicles, because there's like T-26s, but they'll be like the ones with the sleeker turrets. I don't want to use any of those, because I do need a few more T-26s and BT-7s, but I'd like some of them to be the later conical turret version that are just look a lot better in my opinion. And if you think, man, this looks kind of dark, we're going to dry brush the same color over. Remember, this is kind of a modulation method that seems to work okay for me. grab it by there because those high spots are going to end up getting more paint on top of them. Okay, so this is where we're going to stop. We're going to wait for these things to dry, which will be, I want to say maybe even a couple hours. And we're going to see if we can't wake up. Maybe we'll get back on and do something that's going to get me killed if I don't pay attention. And we should be back on later today.